Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to join you today, albeit virtually, for this important conference. My name is Reichel. I'm an operation officer in the International Finance Corporation, based in Port Moresby, but as mentioned, currently in Germany. My responsibility in Port Moresby is focusing on agri and agribusiness advisory services in the South Pacific, and that's the reason why I'm presenting agribusiness opportunities in Papua New Guinea's Markham and Ramu valleys. Oops. One of the major challenges in developing agriculture is that in the past, a lot of organizations tried to distribute projects all over the country. And the projects were not able to use synergies or lessons learned from other projects or put joint efforts together to partner and to be more sustainable in the long-term run. So a number of countries focus currently on agriculture growth corridors. We have a number of areas like Cerrado region in Brazil, which was very successful to develop agriculture. Brazil is one of the leading powerhouses in agriculture, with #1 in many crops. We have the SACOT corridor in Tanzania, and we have, for example, the Beira agriculture growth corridor in Mozambique. And we thought, why we can't replicate this in Papua New Guinea? So looking at the map of PNG, we were starting to think which area could be really interesting, which would be a low-hanging fruit, where we have already a number of agricultural businesses, where we have an interesting backbone infrastructure. And we identified the Markham and Ramu Valley. And I show you the map. Can you see my cursor on the map that I'm moving? It's centrally located in the country. You have on the eastern side, you have Lae.
Yes, we can see that, Christian.
Perfect, thank you. We have Lae, which is the second biggest town in PNG, with the export hub for shipments overseas. We have the Highland Highway going through half of the two valleys and then going west to the highlands, which is a very important market, but also a consumer market, but also a supplier market with roughly 4 million people. But we have also the Ramu Highway, which goes to Madang. That's a very important basic infrastructure, which is essential for development. From Madang, you easily can access the SEPICs. From Lae, you have shipments to the islands. From Lae, you have also shipments to Port Moresby. There's no direct connection. Unfortunately, the government is looking at this, but it will be challenging. And from Lae, you have flights to Port Moresby and to other cities, making a unique central location. The Markham Ramu valleys have roughly 1 million hectares of land, and we analyze through satellite images that roughly 400,000 hectares are easily usable for agriculture purposes, and we will explain a little bit more in details what is possible. I will skip a little bit the history because I have only 15 minutes, but for an investor, it's very important to understand what groups have moved initially, or what are the initial landowners in this region, which groups moved later in, and that also agriculture was very strong between Second World War and the 1780s, when it then in the 80s it went down. So it is a strong agriculture, still a very strong agricultural hub with a number of bigger operations, which I will present. Which I will present on the next slides. When you fly from Port Moresby to Lae, which normally the first step would be as an investor, you fly to Lae, you see already this the lower Markham area, and I show a photo. You will be really impressed. If you're an agronomist, you say, wow, that's beautiful. It's when you see the land, you think that's perfect for mechanical land preparation. On both sides of the valley, you see the mountain ranges. You see huge tracts of lands, which are very, very flat, easy to access because of the main Highland Highway. And on the right side, you have the same mountain tracks. And you see already on this photo, very, very nice soil for agriculture purposes. I have to warn you, not all of the areas are looking like this, yeah? But GIS mapping can show you directly which areas are excellent and which are a little bit less. We have a number of stakeholders operating in the Markham and Ramu. Oh, sorry, I skipped. So I explained the location and the history. So we decided when we saw the Markham and Ramu that we develop a study to conduct a little bit more information. Does it make sense to develop the agriculture growth corridor? And an agriculture growth corridor is a strategy to increase the coordination between public and private investments around a strategic backbone infrastructure to promote economic transformation towards higher productivity, improved employment and market opportunities across low and middle income countries, with agriculture as a focal sector. So, so in this study, we decided or analyzed, does it make sense as a government and development partners to focus on this development?
Thanks. There'll be no questions after this presentation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. The study is supported by the PNG partnership. In the PNG partnership, Australia, New Zealand, and IFC working together through the partnership to stimulate private sector investment and reduce poverty in Papua New Guinea. I'm a little bit faster because I don't have so much time. The three major stakeholders are government and provinces, the development partners, and the private sector. I skip a little bit the government and the provincial governments because they were already explained a little bit their role in previous presentations. I want to focus a little bit more on the development partners because it's very interesting and very important for investors to understand there are many development partners strongly supporting agriculture development. Either it's through infrastructure development or agriculture support services. So we have Australia and New Zealand through DFAT and MFAT. We have the EU with European Investment Bank, USAID, World Bank, IFC, ADB, JICA, FAO, IFAT, and small organizations like MDF, Pharma Plus, and Grow PNG. They're all very interested to see agriculture development, and they're excellent partners to communicate, exchange ideas, information, because they can help you to connect with the right people or to assist you in your investment. For example, IFC is assisting in investments through loans or equity or linking to banks, but also an advisory service. I also would like to point out that a lot of NGOs are in the area with grassroots connection to the villages, and it's essential to communicate with them to understand really what's happening on the ground. On the private sector side, I will explain a little bit more on the next page, but what I want to point out, the 1 million hectare, roughly 400,000 hectares are arable land. Out of this, 59,000 hectares are commercial farming, and 16,000 hectares are managed by smallholder farming. So you see in this circle, there's a lot of land which is unused at the moment. And that's where we think there's a huge potential for current investors, but also for future investors. If you look on the private sector, many companies are focused on the lower Markham, but also Ramu Agri Industries is focused in the Ramu. The picture, the map doesn't show the true picture because Ramu Agri is really big. They are focusing oil palm, sugarcane, and cattle. I don't want to go too much into details because of the time constraints. What I want to point out, you can see still on the map, there are a lot of land in between open and available for agriculture. However, you have to communicate with the local landowners. What is more interesting, if you look on the southern part here, and you see more close shot on this one, Wafi Golpu will build a road from the mine down to the Highland Highway, which will open up this area. And that's very, very unique and very special. I know some companies are already looking at this area, but this opens up for new investment opportunities. And Wafi Golpu, as a mine, has a commitment to support the communities, and they're strongly focusing on agriculture. So if you want to focus on this area, it's very important to communicate with them to understand what their plans and ideas and the roles could be. I'm going to the next page. You see some pictures of agricultural activities I'm going very closely through. This is cassava done for stock feed. You have maize, mainly for stock feed. You have oil palm, which is huge. You have the cattle production. And that's an interesting project. This was developed by Mainland Holding. Unfortunately, it failed. And it shows a case where I would like to see that industry partners really share lessons learned, because this project failed. Because mistakes can happen, failures are normal, but we should avoid to repeat mistakes. So if a new investor is coming in, he should understand why sorghum hasn't worked in the Markham Belt. I believe it can be still sorted out, but I haven't seen the report why it failed. Major issues why the Markham Ramu valleys are still empty are the typical barriers which we have heard in many reports. Typical ones are infrastructure, land ownership, labor, political challenges, climate, access to markets, and finance. I will focus in this presentation more on infrastructure and land ownership. Infrastructure, you can see on the costing, PNG has the highest road transport cost compared to many other countries. And that makes it very uncompetitive in the global market. And that's why we have major challenges to export crops. However, as I pointed out, a lot of development partners are focusing already on these two valleys. We have ADB focusing on the Highland Highway, going up to the west. We have the World Bank focusing on the Ramu Highway, which will be improved. We have the World Bank, which is focusing also on the PACD project, which is coffee, cocoa, coconut, spices, and small livestock. Their program includes also feeder roads, which could improve the access on the last mile. We have JICA developing up or upgrading the Nazab airport. There are even plans to look if this can become an international airport, direct flights to Leh. We have improvements of the seaport, which is essential for exports. And we have a number of partners who are looking at rural electrification. So meaning really focusing on the last mile to improve the business environment for investors. So we believe over the next 10 years, the cost related to infrastructure or lack of infrastructure will be reduced, and hopefully crops produced in PNG will be globally more competitive. A major challenge is still also then the export, the shipments. We have shipments to overseas. For example, there's a direct line from PNG to Malaysia, a port next to Singapore, accessing the Asian market. But the shipping lines are still very limited, and it's a little bit the chicken and egg. The shipping lines are not improving the schedules if the volumes are not going up, but volumes are not going up if there's not adequate shipping services. So we need to see a little bit how to develop this over time. The second largest issue is land ownership. 97% of the land is customary land. There are some places with state leases, but the empty tracts you have seen, that's mostly owned by landowners. And we have seen their challenges. There are some solutions provided by the government, like special agricultural and business leases and ILGs. But when you hear this, I'm sure a lot of people will raise their eyebrows because a lot of things also went wrong. But we believe that's also a question of educating the different partners, both sides, landowners, but also industries, not to take shortcuts, to do standard formats. And what is interesting, Grow PNG is focusing on this. They are developing plans and working with communities to really improve their awareness. What are the right, proper ways to avoid all the mistakes which happens in the past? And we hope this opens up more opportunities to work closely with landowners and smallholders to improve the productivity of this land. Options also, instead of leasing land, to really focus on smallholder supplied value chain. There are options, for example, in coffee, cocoa, majority is smallholder supplied, but also finding middle ways like nuclear estates with outgrower systems or service delivery models, where you partner a mix of smallholders and a nucleus farm. That can be very interesting. I will skip a little bit the other barriers because they were mentioned before, and they are a little bit less critical than the other ones. But I'm happy to share more information afterwards. I'm happy to share also during calls, or if we can meet in Port Moresby and to discuss these points more clearly. We will also share the study, which we will complete in some weeks. If someone is interested, please send me an email and we will send this out. More important now, that's the exciting part. We analyzed through different models what crops can be grown. And I'm showing 4 maps here right now, which cover sugarcane, cassava, pasture land for cattle, maize, but we analyzed also oil palm and sugarcane. I have oil palm and another crop, eucalyptus. Nevertheless, the data we collected can be utilized also for other crops. And it shows there's a high opportunity to grow. So we analyzed the weather, rainfall, climate, change of temperatures over time, soil structure, water access, rivers, what makes sense. And you will see there's a lot of suitable land for agriculture. And we believe that has a huge opportunity. As mentioned in previous presentations, globally, climate change will affect a lot of production areas. Demand for animal protein is still growing. So someone needs to fill the gaps, and PNG, with its unique location between Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia, can be a key partner to fill this gap. We got this information, and that's what's very interesting. And I can understand the frustration of investors to get information. It was very hard to collect the information we have to use for the analysis. For example, the map you see on the upper side, they were conducted in the 60s, 70s, but they were not available in PNG. We got them in Australia. So we had to digitalize them. PNG Biomass also digitalized them to use them. We used, and I would like to thank CSIRO, which is a research institute who analyzed climate change development, rainfall and temperatures for a number of crops. And surprisingly, Markham and Ramu is less impacted by climate change than other regions. And that's one of the unique advantages. We utilized maps like flooding areas. And of course, we did soil analysis, a random soil analysis just to test a little bit the mapping. That's the bottom part here. That's interesting because, oops, sorry, I moved. The maps here are from UNDP, showing the flooding areas. We got the report, but we never were able to receive the raw data for data analysis. And that's what frustrates me a little bit. A lot of research is done, research which is funded by taxpayers, but they are not easily available. And if they are available, they are not easily processable for business decisions. And that's one of the suggestions to government, also and development partners, to really improve information sharing. Because that's important for an investor to analyze what is suitable, what is not possible, to make the first step in an investment decision to see does it work or does it not work. What are the conclusions and recommendations? The Markham and Ramu is a very unique, interesting area. As you have seen, there's a strong backbone infrastructure already, which is getting improved over the next 10 years. We have a number of businesses already there, which is important if you come into an area, if you have other parties supporting you in your business, is making it much easier. We have the development partners to support your investments via investments or advisory services. And PNG has a unique opportunity as location in the Pacific to different countries. So we have a clear recommendation to look for, if an investor is interested in agriculture, to look at the Markham and Ramu and to analyze if it makes sense for them or not. However, there are a number of recommendations to make it more easy for them. To the government, a strong alignment of current and upcoming infrastructure investment is needed. We believe an institutional framework for the agriculture growth corridor is required, so that all the different stakeholders can align their efforts, and this can be also coordinated so that investors are able to understand what's happening, when it's happening, and they can provide also the information what is needed from their side to make it interesting. We believe also for the government, it's important that they focus on a investor mindset. Yeah, on an investor mindset. So to make it a little bit simpler for investment, when you come to the Markham and Ramu, I just wrote here, development of a one-stop shop for investors to simplify processes. It's very challenging to understand what is needed to start a business, how to get connected, what are the requirements, what can I do, what can I not do. Interestingly, the Australian consulate is trying to look at this a little bit, and they invited a number of organizations into the same building where they are located in Leh to create a little bit of one-stop shop. But we believe the government can put more efforts on this to simplify this for investors. Addressing to the investors themselves, communicate with different stakeholders is very important. It surprised us a little bit that a lot of investors are coming into the country. They stay under the radar because they're worried that someone might steal their idea. But I can tell you, when you leave the airplane and step on PNG soil, we already know that you are there. This country is too small. There are no secrets. Communicate to different partners, stakeholders, lessons learned from the past. I met so many people in this country who are happy to share their information, experience, and can provide meaningful input to make your investment stronger. Also invest adequate time to understand Papua New Guinea. I have to be honest, I've been in PNG for the last 5 years, and every month there is something new which I never expected. What is interesting here is you can shortcut this a little bit. There are many opportunities to develop joint ventures. So to partner with a local company, because a number of local companies also are interested to partner up with international organizations to either have access to international markets or access to cheaper inputs, agricultural inputs, or need financial support to just grow. What is also interesting is we have two very strong supernation funds, which is Nest Fund and Number One. They are always looking for investment opportunities and are interested to partner up with organizations. They are shareholders in many organizations in the country, and they can really give you good, insightful information. I'm sure the investment officers of both organizations are happy to talk to you. The second last one is be sure about your market. One of the barriers, which I didn't go into details, is the market size. PNG has 8 to 9 million people, but have in mind 84% of them are directly or indirectly connected to agriculture production. So they are not the largest consumers. There's a high interest of import substitution. It was mentioned rice, roughly 300 to 400,000 tons. Wheat, 200 to 300,000 tons. However, to produce wheat is very challenging in PNG. And there's also major imports of stock feed, which can be replaced. But as mentioned in a previous study, we have to be very careful that we are competitive, globally competitive. Yeah? Otherwise, the local consumers will pay for this, and after 5-10 years, it will fail. Nevertheless, there are opportunities for investors to look at this, but they have to be very, very careful. The biggest opportunities we see are exports. The reason you can see why coffee, cocoa, oil palm are so strong because of the export markets. However, we need to be careful on transport, on the transport cost, which hopefully will be reduced due to the upcoming investments. Last but not least, invest in people and communities. COVID-19 clearly showed a major bottleneck. A lot of expatriates were not able to return to PNG, or they got tired because of, for example, 3 weeks quarantine in PNG, 2 weeks in Australia. It's very, very hard. So a number of expatriates left the countries, of course, bringing challenges to the businesses. Yeah. So you should focus on developing local resources And in the long-term run, it's beneficial. It's first, it's cheaper. They are much better connected. They are staying much longer in your business. And even if they're leaving, as a business community will improve, because as better managers we have in the entire country, as better businesses are running. And the focus on communities. That's why we recommend in agriculture activities to work closely with the communities, landowners on outgrowth schemes, so that smallholder farmers can benefit from your value chain.